What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast, where we are here to help you be happy, healthy, wealthy, and get better every single day. We have somebody that is an expert in podcasts. As you guys know, I am passionate about it. I think it's the most incredible forum. You guys are here, so you know it's a pretty amazing forum, too. This guy literally, I believe, has 6 podcasts, so he knows what he's talking about. Michael Neeley is a former actor, member of the Screen Actors Guild, and medieval knight turned speaker and mentor. Michael has appeared in feature films with Mel Gibson and Kevin Costner, performed off-Broadway with Andre Braugher and Kathleen Chalfant, and had recurring roles in several popular soap operas. He is an international best-selling author and the founder of the Authority Academy and the Infinite List, where he trains heart-centered entrepreneurs in professional speaking, virtual summits, publishing, and podcasting to help them grow their businesses. Well, brother, you sound busy, man. How you doing?
Good. How about you, man?
I'm good.
Your show, by the way, that's awesome.
Nah, brother. Like I said, I love podcasts. I know you do too. I mean, you have your Podcasters Crew shirt on, so that's cool, and we'll get to that. I guess where I would start is, so acting, man, that was your background, and you did a lot of cool stuff, and then you found your way into the business world. What does that story look like, man?
Yeah, it was kind of wild. So I knew I wanted to be an actor ever since I was in the 4th grade, and I did a little school play, a class play. But then after, a long and varied acting career, hills and valleys, my son was born in Los Angeles in 2002. And by the time he was 2 years old, I was like, this really isn't the life for raising a kid and a family and plus the lovely clean air of Los Angeles. So we left LA and moved up to Santa Cruz, where the air really is beautiful and right there on the coastline. And I got to be honest, man, I floundered for a while. I was just trying to find jobs just to, get the revenue flowing. And I got in, I did a high-tech startup company, and we raised a lot of money for that. And when we were hitting the end of our financial runway, I'd kind of fallen into coaching. I knew a lot of coaches in the space, mindfulness coaches and consciousness, and I'd done a lot of personal development work. And I was coaching a client, and he was having these great breakthrough moments, and I thought, we should be recording this. And so he agreed, and we recorded, and at the end, we played it back, and he was like, dude, that sounds good. You should start a podcast. And this was 2014. I'd heard the word, but didn't know what a podcast was exactly. I'd never listened to one in my life. And 2 weeks later, I launched my show, and everything kind of changed and took off on a new path. And then I really found my voice again.
It's interesting because to me, it's like golf or find a hobby that you love. When you catch the bug, I don't think people understand. When you catch it, it's one of those things that for me anyway, that's how it was. Like, I fell in love with it. I think the coolest part about podcasts, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, but I interviewed my best friend of almost 30 years, and I thought I knew everything about this man. I mean, there wasn't anything I didn't know. And sure enough, I have him on the show, and I'm like, what? And I'm finding out these things because we're asking deeper questions than just how's your day going, how's the family. That's what I think I love, and the networking piece, man. I meet phenomenal people like yourself all the time. What have you found that's been so just filled your bucket when it comes to this forum?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, brother, man. It's like, it's a cool community. I mean, this is one of the things about it. We always call it, it's still the wild, wild west in the podcasting space. I mean, anybody can do it, and it's not difficult to start a podcast, difficult to make one successful, but starting them is easy. And because of that, there's this kind of a natural camaraderie among podcasters. We all want to see each other win, which I think is beautiful. And for me, one of the things that I love about it is the connection element. Yes, you're going to learn some amazing stuff. You might think you got it down, and then boom, you're going to get some more wisdom out of it. But for me, it even goes beyond that. Like, I've made lifelong best friends through podcasting, either meeting another podcaster at an event or doing show swaps and connecting with people. And one of my shows I co-host with 2 of my best friends that I met who were podcasters of their own shows, and that brought us together in the world. And part of why I created the Podcasters Cruise is to continue that connection, so we all get to hang out with each other in the real world, IRL, as they would say. And so for me, that is a big beauty of podcasting.
You mentioned it's hard to make them, let's say, profitable, monetize, successful. And it is one of those things where often I'll have people say, well, gosh, if you're not making money, why do you do it? For me, it's been one of those things, like you said, I've connected with amazing people. I've done business deals that I would have never, or I don't believe I would have come across because of it. So trying to put a specific dollar amount to mine currently, I don't think I could do it. It probably cost me more money, no question. However, that intangible, but you're actually you're monetizing shows. That's something that you're doing a great job of. What is that missing piece, brother? Where are people missing it? Because I'll be that guy, like I could do this for years, not get paid a dime, and my bucket's filled. But I know often people stop because look, it's a business. You need to make money.
Yeah. Well, let me be real clear. And I love the point that you hit on in there, JM, is you're still getting benefit from it. And so one of the things that I teach in my book called the Zero to Launch Podcast Accelerator is about objectives. What is the objective for why you created the podcast? And as long as it's serving that objective, which may not be money, then it's a win. Okay. And so as a real world example, let me see, try to reach, I usually have little things around for my shows, different ones. This is for my show, Consciously Speaking. I was looking to see if I had anything sitting here for my show, something to whine about, but I don't see anything. Here we go. See, I have junk all around everywhere. So this is for my show, Something to Whine About, these little fridge magnets. And that show was created for one simple reason, and we're not monetizing it as one might normally think. The way we monetize it is that if you're in the wine industry, and having a wine podcast makes you industry. When we go to the wineries, we never have to pay for tastings, and we get a 30% discount on our wine. And I love wine. I've been a wine collector for years. So that's the objective of that show. I don't care how many listeners we have. We don't want sponsors. We're not collecting money that way, but I'm saving a boatload on wine. And so that's the objective.
Well, now we got to get into wine at some point because I love wine. I would have never thought. This is why I love creative people. You're like, look, I'm getting no taste. So I'm cruising through Napa. I'm not getting charged anything on my tastings. I can't tell you how much 30%, that's saving thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a year.
Yes, exactly. And by the way, awesome. And I call this particular method of monetization freebies and write-offs. Now, I'm not a CPA. I have played one on TV, literally. But so you would have to consult your own accountant for this. But I can also write off these trips because it's part of my business of the Wine Podcast. So there's other value as well, freebies and write-offs. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's plenty of others just in that realm of serving that objective.
Yeah, it's cool because you putting value out there. People that love wine are getting a ton of value. They get a chance to hear about something they're passionate about, and you are receiving. So the give and the receive is in alignment. And I think often you mentioned businesses, sometimes that's where we mess it up is we'll give, or we'll take. It has to work where you're getting both. I'm curious to hear, because you mentioned 2 of your podcasts. You have 6, do you not?
6. And a couple more in development.
Wow. So this is your full-time deal, man. You are going on podcasts. Obviously, you have the infinite list, which I'd love to hear more about that. But 6. I do 1, and it's a hell of a lot of work. How, brother? How do you pull 6 off? All
right. Well, first of all, to be clear, every show has its own objective and purpose, and sometimes it's not a matter of I don't have to release on a weekly basis. So that would be step 1 to be clear of. And by the way, just as a little side note, I don't go back and listen to my own shows, but except for the Something to Whine About show, which again, we're just sporadic. We release them whenever we feel like it. But I love listening to those shows because we're always having such a good time. It reminds me of the great time we had at that particular winery. And so I'll listen to those. But the other stuff, it's like I've got a show that's got over 400 episodes. I haven't put out anything new in a couple of years because we're revamping it. Sometimes you want to get renewed energy about a show that you've done for so long. That was my firstborn. And again, over 400 episodes. I'm ready for a change. And so it's been brewing for a couple of years, not releasing stuff, but it's still out there bringing in business. It brings in new leads, people into my world. It's still getting a lot of downloads. So there's that as well. So I'm not doing 6 shows on a regular release schedule. Although when I first launched Consciously Speaking, it was a 7-day-a-week show. So, you could do 6 individual shows or 1 show 7 days a week. It was pretty crazy back then.
Yeah, man, you're putting in the work there for sure. But again, it's not work if you love it. Talk to me about the infinite list, because again, I met you on the Marketers Cruise. Shout out to Mike Filsame and his team. Had a great time, met so many good people networking. And I know you're doing something similar with the podcast cruise, which absolutely we need to hit on that. But one of the things that really stuck with me when you spoke was when you talked about the infinite list.
Yeah.
And I think any business owner listening right now is saying that list is gold. So infinite list, I mean, you got me there. I'd love to hear. What's that all about?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. So I was taught very early on, and once I got into this whole online business aspect, that a couple of things. One is that your money's in your list. And I truly get that, but I didn't really get it until my list size hit over 10,000. Okay. But the other thing that I learned from Jeff Walker, one of my early mentors in the business space, said, rule number one, only sell stuff the market really wants. And rule number 2, always be building your list. And again, while it made sense to me, I didn't really rock it, really get it in my body until my list was big enough. And then I started to go, oh, holy cow, this is really starting to generate a flow. And so when I created the infinite list, it's like this. Imagine you do something that gets your list really big. You put out a big thing, you got a JV partner, you do a big launch, and your list grows to, let's say it grows up to 1,000. We'll just play with easy numbers. Grows to 1,000. Every time you email, you're going to get some unsubscribes. So your list is going to start to dwindle. Okay. And that is the general process of the business world when you got a list. Unless you're doing something to continue to fill that bucket, it is going to decrease over time. And if you don't fill it, eventually it'll go down to 0, and then you got to start over. And so at the infinite list, the whole theory behind it is, how can we continue to fill that bucket so that we're bringing in more than we're losing, so we create an upward trajectory. And the way to do that I teach through the infinite list and our number one list building community in the world, which we've created with it, is we run giveaways. They're gift giveaways. So you're getting your lead magnet, that freebie that you put out to the world, you're getting it in front of the right eyeballs on a regular basis. Pretty much every day of the week, I've got 10, 20 new leads flowing into my inbox because I've got this stuff going out into the world. And no matter how much I mail, and I email my list almost daily,
wow,
I've still got a growing list because of this. And so that's what I created with the infinite list.
Wow, that's amazing. And something that number 10,000 seems like that magic number, to where it's like, okay, it's really starting to yield some dividends. Again, you're putting the value out, you're giving stuff away, and you're starting to receive. What is the biggest challenge you see people do? Do they not send out enough? Is it the not freebie, that's probably the wrong terminology, the giveaway? But where do people mess this up? Because again, building a list for some seems so easy. For some, it's a real challenge. And I'll put myself in that boat. Early in this company, building that list wasn't an easy task.
No, it's not. And here's part of where it creates this dynamic that I think is the challenge. To answer your question on that, we know when we're first starting, we first get 200, 300 people on your list. You're like, oh my God, that was hard, but this is great. I've now got this list. But now that also breeds this challenge that all of a sudden somebody unsubscribes and you're like, what happened? What did I do wrong? And you start, you hate the unsubscribes. And when that happens, then you start to get very protective, like, oh, well, I don't want to say anything wrong. I don't want to push my list too hard. I don't want to email too much. I don't want to promote somebody else's thing because I don't want people to leave. That is the kiss of death. Okay, that is the big learning that I had, and it took a while because at the beginning I'm like, I don't want to lose any of these people. I literally was panicking, like, what did I do? Why did you unsubscribe? When you let go of that and realize your list is not there to be your pen pal, they're there to buy something from you. Hopefully, when you let go of that, and especially you can let go when you know you have a constant flow coming in, you start to not worry about the unsubscribes, and therefore you will market more assertively, aggressively to your list, which is what they're there for. Serve them, sell them, give them your services, do that. And I'm not saying do it stupidly. You still want to take care of your list. You want to nurture them, but you also want to be free to market to them. That is a monumental shift in the way of thinking that will now also increase your business revenue.
Yeah, one of the words you continue to use is serve them. And I think of value. I think, you're not just putting stuff out. Like you said, send something out that the market actually wants. Yeah. But you also have a topic on here that I want to talk about, because mindset is a huge part of what we talk about on the show. And that is business is 98% mindset. Okay, I'm in, brother. Tell me what because I've heard various, percentages, but 98%, I'm in. Let's hear about it.
Yeah. So here's the thing. When you look at, and I've worked with, hundreds of entrepreneurs, if not thousands, and I see the challenge often that they get caught up in their own mind game that blocks them. They have belief systems that are so ingrained in them that prevent them from either taking the right action or prevent them from the mindset that is going to open the door for them. One of those, just as an example, is when I buy a cup of coffee. I go to Starbucks, I buy my cup of coffee. That is an expense. That's money spent that I will never get back. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs wasting money on expenses instead of investments. Now, if I buy a program or a training or a book even that is going to educate me and help me in my business, that's an investment. And I see so many entrepreneurs who don't have the mindset of investment, such that many of them go, okay, well, I'm going to start my business. And of course, I get that they want to bootstrap it and run it on a shoestring budget, but that is the wrong mindset, because you have to invest in it. You think people who start a business or even buy a franchise, they're investing in it. You've got to invest in your growth, invest in your business, make wise choices with it. But that is a mindset issue alone right there, just to overcome that block that many people have.
Yeah, I set a budget every year for what I'm going to develop, or in terms of personal development, masterminds. I have doubled it every year in terms of, I'll set it at, let's say, $5,000. Every year I spend at least 10. And people think I'm crazy. Like, oh, you're going to spend $25,000 on a mastermind? 100% I will, because I'm pouring back into me. It's not an expense. To your point, it's 100% an investment. I wish more people would definitely hear that, and I hope you guys all did hear that. You mentioned the word action, and you have another topic on here that I thought was interesting. The difference between being in motion and being in action. Oftentimes, I see entrepreneurs that acting or taking action is the place where they fall flat. They have the perfect product, perfect strategy. Not that anything's actually perfect, but they're ready to go. But then for some reason, that action doesn't take place. What is the difference between being in motion and being in action?
So first of all, I have to give credit where credit's due. I actually pulled a little bit of this concept, and I'm probably butchering it a little bit, from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I really love that book. And for me, what it boils down to is, and I've caught myself doing this, is that many times, we create that checklist, that to-do list, and we want to just have that feeling of getting stuff done. Oh, boom. Hey, got to check that off. And we're going through those motions instead of taking the action on what's really going to move the needle. So now what I do when I create my list, my to-do list, I go through and I look at what are the ones that are really going to move the needle in my business. What are the ones that need to be done right now to bring in the cash flow? And those are the actions that I take instead of just going through the motions of keeping busy. And that's kind of the differentiator, the way that I describe it. I probably butchering a little bit from the book, but for me, I see so many people who just go, oh, well, I got to do this, and then I got to do that, and I got to do something. I'm like, no, you don't. You got to get on the phone and call somebody or whatever it may be. I'm not a big phone calling sales kind of guy, but take the action that is actually going to move the needle. And that's the difference there.
Yeah, when you made that transition from LA to Santa Cruz, because I think this is the part that's scary for people. You clearly made a lifestyle decision. Son was born. This isn't where I want to raise them. Now, that's a decision that you made. However, that's a scary decision when I have guaranteed money coming in. Well, maybe not guaranteed, but I have a good platform set up. People know me. You get up to Santa Cruz, and to your words, you're kind of floundering, you're kind of figuring it out. I want to go back to that mindset, to what actually got you to start moving positively in the right direction. What was it? Was there a step, a moment where you're like, oh yeah, that was the light bulb? Because I think people don't make the leap. They stay in jobs they're not happy with for years because of that scary moment that you were experiencing in Santa Cruz. I want to go back to that place and see if we can really get into your mindset of what got you moving to where you are today.
I love that question, JM. It's and as I look back on it, I was taking a leap of faith. I had no job when I left LA. So remember, I was an actor. It was funny. I started doing temp work and then stayed with the particular company that had hired me as a temp job because they were giving me the freedom to do acting work whenever I needed to. And so I did that for several years. But as we were now ready to leave LA, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? So I've probably went through 3 or 4 different jobs, and I'll just line them up. I worked for a publishing company trying to sell books to schools. Didn't like that. I worked for a television station selling advertising. Didn't like that. I then got into the pharmaceutical industry as an account executive. Did that for a while, but then it just bored me because I wasn't getting to do any of my creative stuff. And then, as I said, that actually kind of had me fall into the lap of doing high-tech industry and just did a startup. And so that's the floundering part I was talking about. Yeah, I was making money, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And so it was just a leap of faith. I mean, I just kept plugging away until I found my groove again, like I said, and that just was happenstance, and found my voice back. So it took a while.
Yeah, we always talk about the good things, typically the accolades and all these things. But the truth is there's always a journey, man. It's like it wasn't rainbows and sunshine the entire time. Like, just like any hike, I mean, there's peaks and valleys. And I think those valleys are or the peaks, I don't know which one's better, actually. But when you're in the valley, when you're not seeing the light, it's like, how do I persevere? How do I get through? But I think when people find their passion, that's when greatness happens. And, again, I heard it yesterday. Somebody's like, they don't know what they want to be when they grow up. Well, no shit, man. A lot of us feel the same way. But I don't think we need to necessarily just say, this is who I am. I'm an accountant. I'm this. You're developing 2 more podcasts, and next thing you know, you could be doing something totally different. But is that kind of what you found, is when you're passionate about something, when you really love it, you're going to find a way to make it work? And that, I know it sounds cliche, but I think that's the gold that people do need to hear, because when you're happy, now your relationships are better, your business is better, everything starts to expand.
You're spot on with that. And I'm just going to share a story, going back probably 14 years. I'd picked my son up from school and was driving him home, and he was a young kid. I mean, it was, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, maybe 8 tops. And I just asked him, I don't know why it came up, but I just asked him, like, because I know he's young. We were talking about, I'm like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And he just goes, I'm not sure. I just want to be happy. And that just lit my heart up, because for me, like you nailed it there, JM, is like, that is it. Just be happy. And if you're happy mowing lawns, mow lawns. If you're happy working fast food, work fast food. Find what makes you happy, and everything else kind of will fall into place. I firmly believe that. And so that's kind of been my pursuit of happiness for my own work, is what lights me up. And I'm lit up being of service in the world, helping other entrepreneurs grow their business so they can be of service in the world, and reaching more people and connecting more people. And that lights me up.
I'm guessing the podcaster cruise was an idea that came from that. Like, oh, I get to connect with more like-minded people. Tell me more about that, brother. When is this taking place? What does the itinerary look like? I mean, everyone, well, not everyone, most people love cruises. You got good food, you got some booze, you got, all the good stuff, but you're going to be surrounding yourself with some like-minded people. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, so I've been going on the Marketers Cruise for a few years, and Captain Lou Edwards, who you've met him now, has put that all together. And so I had reached out to Lou and said, hey, can we do this for podcasters? Because I wanted it to be more of a niche market. The Marketers Cruise is kind of broad spectrum. I wanted it to be more niched in, a little smaller group. And so he was a huge support in making that happen with us. So big kudos going out to Captain Lou Edwards. And I just really love what we did. We created our first one was last year, and it went really well. And so we're gearing it up to be an annual thing. And our next one is in October, 12th through the 19th. And it's on a Carnival cruise line, Mardi Gras, one of their biggest, most luxurious ships. I've been on it twice already. I love this as a cruise ship. And it's going to be a group of about 100 podcasters, podcast guests, podcast adjunct, so people who teach and support the podcasting space. And it's just an intimate group where, yes, we're on a big ship, but we get to meet and have fun together. And then we also do the island excursions, much like the Marketers Cruise does. And so we're excited for that and would love to have you join us even.
Yeah, and I will say real quick, for those that have any judgment on Carnival, because my wife was one of them that said, you're going on the Walmart of the seas. And I'm just being honest. That's what she said. Yeah. The ship that we went on was fantastic. It really was. The food was very good. And you're going on an even bigger ship. So I just want people, just so you don't stop and say, I'm not doing it because of that. We had a great time. Very similar to a Royal Caribbean experience. And so I just have to put that out there because my wife was the one that literally is like, we're not going on this because. And I was like, no, we are going on it because we're going to meet amazing people. And the ship was awesome.
Well, and to be clear on that, let me add a little note to that. The reason we use Carnival as well is because Carnival is amenable to having large groups like we do for the Marketers Cruise or the Podcasters Cruise. And some ships, they don't have the space for it or they're not willing to adjust for it. But we get, as you saw on the Marketers Cruise, we got their big theater to do stuff. And so, and by the way, I know you gave kudos to the ship we were just on, but the Mardi Gras blows it away. So it's really an awesome ship. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's, again, I like to hit on some of the topics you guys like talk about. I mean, we could talk podcasts for days, but you talk about shifting your way of thinking opens incredible doors. And I think that's a perfect segment to what we just talked about. Having a growth mindset, I think, is so key to any entrepreneur finding success. When you get stuck in this closed-minded thinking, for instance, I'm not going on said cruise ship because of this reputation, extremely closed-minded, and I would have lost out on meeting yourself, meeting a handful of other incredible entrepreneurs that I'm going to do business with, I'm going to do life with. When you talk about shifting that mindset, because clearly you've made that shift from actor into high tech, into entrepreneur, into podcasts, clearly, do you have a system that you use, Michael? Is it just really being open to having a growth mindset?
It's not that I have a system per se, but I will say this. I have done a ton of personal work through my life. And way back even in my acting career, I did studies in ontology, the studies of humans as beings, what we are being in the world. And I did a lot of work with Tony Robbins, and I did landmark education. I've studied with Gay and Katie Hendricks and David Data. And so doing a lot of personal work, and I'm a practicing Buddhist as well. So all these practices combine for me, to put me in that mind space of understanding the power of thought and the power of the universe and putting stuff out into the universe. And so I think that's crucial, that we all need to do that kind of personal work if we really want to open up our mindset and get it cleared so that we can create effectively and be effective leaders in the world.
You know, Buddhism is the world I've landed in for the last, 15 years. Mm-hmm. I was raised Catholic, and it wasn't you as well.
Yeah.
And it just didn't fit with me. Look, I know many people that love Catholicism. It's their jam. Cool. Mm-hmm. For me, Taoism, Buddhism, somewhere in that realm made sense. I'm curious what your experiences look like, because literally I have a Buddha there. I have two behind me. I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. It's a lifestyle. So when you say a practicing Buddhist, what does that look like for you, brother? Is that meditation? Is that going to temple? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So, and it's so funny you say that you were also raised as a Catholic. I was an altar boy growing up and everything as well. So for me, Buddhism, and by the way, and there are lots of different Buddhist sects, SECTS, Buddhist sects. And some of them, I think, have tried to transform Buddhism into a religion. And the truth is, Buddha was not a god, never claimed to be. Okay. He was a man, but he was a philosopher, a prophet, if you will, who you follow. It's a philosophy. It's a way of life. It's not a religion. And so any of those sects that try to turn it into a religion with the prayer and all that, I don't necessarily buy into that. I do believe in meditation, and I believe in reading from the Dharma and reading his teachings and see what fits with you, because that was the other thing that a lot of people, I think, get wrong about Buddha. But Buddha taught that if my teachings fit for you, if they work for you, great, use it. And if it doesn't, throw it away. And another thing that he taught that I think is so key that I will often mention when I'm talking to people about the process of learning things, he said, imagine my teachings are like the boat that gets you from this shore to the next shore. When you get off the boat, you don't pick up the boat and carry it with you. Okay, it's already served its purpose. Now go on and find perhaps the next teaching. And so there are some of the things that I love about the Buddhist teachings that I will follow to the grave.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, because I've said this many times. It's a philosophy. It's not really a religion. Although my father-in-law is Thai. I've been to Thailand and discovered some incredible temples. Mm-hmm. In fact, this bracelet that I wear nonstop is from a monk in Thailand. But to that point, I've never felt like it was structured in a way that you had to meditate a certain way, or you had to kneel, because I was a confirmed Catholic. I too was an altar boy, and it was so structured. Whereas Buddhism is really, treat others with kindness. I mean, that's the overall tenet for me, is like, just, be kind to fellow man.
Yeah.
So what are you working on now? You said 2 potential shows that you have going. What else is going on in your business world?
Well, let's see if I can reveal. It's so funny. I don't know how much I'll reveal in this, but the 2 shows are like vastly different from each other. Okay. Almost as far apart as can be. So I'll share one of them. And it's interesting because you mentioned on the boat, like the drinking that's available. And of course, I have a wine podcast, but I also love spirits. I'm a bourbon guy, but I like other spirits as well. And so one of the shows that I've already recorded a lot of episodes and haven't released yet is called Whiskey, Tequila, Foxtrot. And the concept behind the show is I, as the host, will bring in 3 guests, and we will sit down together. And this one we do in person. We will sit down together, and we will record 4 episodes back to back, each episode being 30 minutes long. And each episode, we're reviewing a particular spirit, and we drink 2-ounce shot of that. And then we record the next 30 minutes, and then we record the next 30 minutes. So the idea is that by every 4th show, we're probably a little bit sloshed, maybe a little more loose lipped. And the episodes we've recorded have been totally fun. And a little wild and crazy. And so we'll see if that one ever makes the light of day, because it's a little wild.
Joe, I'll just quickly, WTF. I freaking love it.
Exactly,
Whiskey,
WTF.
Tequila, Foxtrot. So good.
Yeah. So that's that show. And then the other one, let's see how much I can reveal about it, because this one I'm going to do under a pseudonym, because I don't want it to be it's not about me. And it's a show of being of service in the world to lonely people. That's about all I'll share about it, but it won't be under my name. It'll be a pseudonym, and I won't be promoting it through other stuff, because I don't want it to be necessarily associated with me, because it's totally opposite of any kind of an ego project. It is about being of service to lonely people in the world.
That's awesome, man. It's certainly needed.
Yeah.
Whiskey, tequila, Foxtrot. If you need a tequila guy, that's my 100%. There's one vice in my world. It's tequila and red wine. So kindred spirits there, brother. I don't do the bourbon anymore because it tears up my stomach, but man, do I love tequila. It just makes people happy. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Michael, what didn't I know enough about you to know to ask that you're like, man, we got to make sure and share this with the audience before we kind of start to wrap up? Because I'm sure there's a bunch, man. You're an interesting guy, but I just, I want to know what you want to make sure to share.
Well, you actually covered quite a bit. I mean, we've kind of run the gamut from my whole experience from back in my acting days to up to the stuff to even my, Buddhism and other elements. I would say, okay, here's one potentially is I also have done a lot of my personal development in the area of plant medicine, or what is known in my space as doing medicine journeys. I've done ayahuasca many times. I've done guided MDMA journeys, and I actually guide people on journeys and medicine journeys. And for me, it is a way to break easily through the veil of consciousness that we get blocked with our own perceptions of what society is and what is real. And so that's an area of work that I do too that is not a lot of people know about.
Yeah, let's talk about that just a bit, because I did an ayahuasca journey last May. I had never done any psychedelics in my life, and this was my introduction, which the people I was surrounded with thought that was insane, but it was really something that I wanted to do. Now, for those of you that have not done a plant medicine journey, don't think of it as like, oh, we're going to go have this amazing trip. I'm not saying it wouldn't be an amazing journey. It is real work, just like all self-development is, just like Landmark is, because I did one very similar, the Psy, if you know them, and it's similar work, but it's not easy. And I think that's what people sometimes mistakenly like, oh, these guys are going out in the woods and they're doing some mushrooms or they're doing ayahuasca and it's just this amazing fairy trip. No, it's real work. And for you to say, I've done several, there's a reason you've gone back several times, because you're getting real value from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to tie a little piece of this also into what I talked about earlier on the podcasting space of freebies and write-offs. And one of the things that was fortunate for me, it kind of fell into my lap with my show, Consciously Speaking, that I mentioned a little bit earlier, my firstborn. Because of that show and the nature of my audience, I was invited down to Rhythmia. I don't know if you've heard of Rhythmia Life Advancement Center down in Costa Rica. And I was invited down there, all expenses paid, to come and interview the founders and several of their high-up staff there and do 4 nights of ayahuasca while I was on this journey. And part of the delay with the show of Consciously Speaking, the reason I haven't put out any new stuff is I'm going to kind of rebrand it, and we're going to do the new launch. We'll feature all of these interviews I did at Rhythmia to really shift. And you were so spot on. It's not a pleasure drug where you're going out there and going, hey, woo, we're going to party, get high. No, it's work. You're doing the work. And I highly recommend it. And a little side note that was so funny, you said your first experience of any of it was with ayahuasca. When I went to Rhythmia, Jam, I thought, okay, there's probably going to be a lot of bohemians, hippies, kind of earthy people there. It's that vibe kind of a thing. I was so wrong. The vast majority of people there doing these ayahuasca journeys with me 4 nights straight during a 7-day event were in their 60s and 70s and had never done a drug before in their life. They were there for healing. They were there for to do the work. And it was amazing to me and touching and really awesome.
Yeah, it is work, and it is healing, and it is medicine. And people often don't understand that. When people say plant medicine, it's not like this is a strategy. It's really what it is. Mm-hmm. And I know because you're getting touched. I mean, you see some amazing things occur during these events to where, so for me, I had lost my dad to suicide a year and a half ago. And so it was one of those things where I wanted to reach the subconscious because I knew there's more going on. There's other things I had intentions for, but that really came through for me. And I'm curious, MDMA, because I know very little about that.
Mm-hmm.
So you guide people through that as well, Michael?
Yes. And so MDMA has a street name of Molly. It's also known as ecstasy, but MDMA is kind of like the official name for it, of the elements in it, which I don't even know what the MDMA stands for itself. But it is, what I like about that, I would call it the love drug, if you will, but I also even more deeply look at it like this. It's a truth serum. It's a truth serum in two ways, though. It's a truth serum and it allows you to speak truth, and it also allows you to hear truth without the clouded biasness of the world. And there actually was, they did it, I don't know if it was 60 Minutes or on 2020, but they did this kind of an expose, if you will, on it. And he did MDMA. And afterwards, he said that he believed that if all the world leaders got in a room together and did MDMA, there would be no more war, no more fighting, and they would solve all the problems of the world. Basically. So
yeah, again, I've never done that either. I lived in Amsterdam, or not Amsterdam, Groningen during the 99-2000 when ecstasy was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only thing I heard about, is that really it was that field drug. But here's the thing. Again, the medicine, it's not that. I do want to make sure there's a distinction. Yeah. But you're able to receive your subconscious. You're able to tap into that in a way that in a sober state of mind, quote unquote, you just can't. Well, brother, we did cover a lot today, and you have so much. I want people to be able to reach you, whether it's for the podcast or the Podcasters Cruise, the Infinite List. Where's the best place for them to connect with you, Michael?
You know what? Just probably get on my mailing list maybe. And I mean, I'm happy to give my email out, because when you get an email from me on my mailing list, that's my email, and you reply to it, and people reply to my emails all the time. Go to michael@michaelneeley.com to email me. And yeah, if you have any interest in any of these things, I love to share about them. You can check out my podcasts. And one finishing thing before we jump off this, JM, because you said something on it about, as we were talking about the MDMA, that I don't want to gloss over. And that is that it is still set and setting. There are people, like when you were talking about in Amsterdam, who do it as a party drug. Okay. And while that, I'm not dissing those people who choose to do that, but I will say this, that when you do it as a personal development tool and as a journey, I've always done it with a guide, or I've guided people on it where I'm not on it while I'm guiding someone. I think that is a very different setting, and it's all about set and setting. And so I just wanted to be sure we didn't gloss over that before we let that piece go.
No, it's a good point. And whether it's ayahuasca or it's MDMA or it's psilocybin, I mean, here's what people may not realize. It's a very spiritual thing. Often there's a lot of music happening. There's a ton of, years and years and years this has been taking place. So there's a ton of sacred traditions. And so to even remotely call it a drug, which, by the way, prior to me doing ayahuasca, I would have called it that. But then I realized that, no, it's not. So I'm really glad you said that. So check him out, michaelneeley.com. Absolutely. He's got so much going on, so much to help, whether it's a podcast or building the Infinite List. Thank you, brother, for coming on, man. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, man, thank you for having me, JM. It's such a pleasure. I love what you're up to in the world. It was great for me to get to know more about you, too. This is really awesome.
That's truly my pleasure. You guys, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with, whether you choose to do a podcast or you just want to go see what he's doing. Building your list, never a bad idea. Go check out his books. Go to michaelneeley.com. And until next time, remember, your mindset matters. I appreciate all of you so very much. We'll talk soon.